so much and happy to be here. My name is Caroline Seblad, and from the beginning, I'm a lawyer, so I'm a master in law. But in early stages of my career, I found out that leadership is more my interest. So I've been working as a leader in 15 years, as a leader in an insurance company, both in Sweden, but also in the Nordic countries, so in Denmark and Norway. And since 7 years, I run my own business because I found out that what I like most is to work with development. So I develop leaders and business within my own company now that's called Nifea Leadership Development. Actually, consensus is deeply rooted in Swedish culture, both in society and in business. We often do try to find consensus before we feel comfortable moving forward. So for us as business coaches, we actually try to strengthen the individual by giving mandates and power and courage to move forward without waiting for everyone else to agree. And I have an example from when I used to work at the insurance company. We had British owners and Danish owners. So the British owners would tell the Danish owners what the Swedes should do. And we got these directives from them. But in Sweden, you can't just come up with the decision and hope that everyone will follow. You have to find this kind of consensus. So it took us a little bit of more time to get everyone on board and to get everyone aligned with what we were supposed to do. And then we could move forward. So the Danes and the British were somewhat frustrated sometimes because it took a little bit longer for us to implement the decisions. But when they were implemented, we all moved forward real quick from Sweden, while the British and the Danes sometimes had like resistance still within their organizations, holding them back. So that would slow them down a little bit, a bit onward in the process while we were just moving. So sometimes you have to start slow to move fast. And that is the Swedish consensus in an example from real life.
Also es gibt in China vor allem in den größeren Städten etablierte Coaching-Szene, die auch von Leuten gut genutzt wird. Ich glaube, die Kundinnen und Kunden, die Coaching in Anspruch nehmen, brauchen im Wesentlichen zwei Dinge, nämlich einerseits sozusagen die finanziellen Mittel dazu, weil es eine sehr teure Dienstleistung ist in China, und andererseits auch ein gutes Verständnis, welche Form von Beratung Coaching eigentlich ist. Die Coaching-Angebote in China sind meiner Meinung nach stark amerikanisch geprägt und nicht unbedingt systemisches Coaching in unserem Sinn. Also da geht sehr viel um Motivational Training. Das ist ein Aspekt. Es gibt natürlich auch systemisches Coaching als Angebot. Und da glaube ich, braucht schon eine große Reflexionsfähigkeit und Bereitschaft sozusagen für Menschen in China, sich darauf einzulassen, weil es tatsächlich auch historische Hintergründe, politische Hintergründe gibt, wo das einfach sehr stark mit psychischen Krankheiten zum Beispiel gleichgesetzt würde. Und sozusagen über diese kleinen Hürden muss man drüber. Ich habe selber mit Kundinnen und Kunden in China immer wieder zusammengearbeitet, wo dann aber, wenn dieses Verständnis da ist, der Kunde bringt seine Themenstellung, der Kunde arbeitet vorrangig selbst an der Lösungsfindung, das vergleichbar ist mit einem Coaching-Gespräch, genauso wie wir es hier in Europa führen.
Die Unterschiede auch so über dieses Verständnis von Hierarchie und Autorität, merkt man das als Coach?
Ich würde sagen, im individuellen Einzelcoaching kaum bis gar nicht. Ich mache auch Workshops, Führungskräfteprogramme in größeren Gruppen. Da treten natürlich Dinge wie Hierarchie, Distanz auf. Ja, und kurz zusammengefasst, je ländlicher oder je traditioneller sozusagen strukturiert da die Organisation ist, umso stärker tritt es hervor. Es gibt natürlich gerade jetzt so im europäischen Kontext viele Unternehmen, die Joint Ventures haben, auch mit staatsnahen Betrieben, wo meist dahinter auch eine Parteistruktur ist. Da ist Hierarchie und eine eigene Form von Beziehungen sehr, sehr deutlich spürbar, wenn auch nicht transparent.
Mhm. Für dich als Coach, nachdem du ja in beiden Welten sozusagen unterwegs bist, musst du anders agieren oder auf die Leute zugehen? Oder merkst du für dich einen Unterschied in der Arbeitsweise?
Eigentlich kaum. Also es geht in beiden Situationen, Europa oder China, natürlich darum, eine gute Arbeitsbeziehung darzustellen. Es geht mir immer darum, auch das Setting gut zu erklären. Und wenn sich dann die Leute darauf einlassen, sehe ich da kaum einen Unterschied. Das, was mir immer wieder auffällt, einfach die Sprache ist unterschiedlich. Also ich mache die Coachings ja auch auf Chinesisch. Ja, im Chinesischen gibt es keinen zweiten Konjunktiv und da muss man halt dann einfach sprachlich sozusagen präzise formulieren. Ja.
Hello, Namaste, Vanakkam from India. I'm going to talk in the topic of shades and shadows influencing the organizational growth. I see our Indian culture in two levels. One is a visible part of the culture and other is a shadow part of the culture. The visible part of the culture is that we are very adjustable people because we have to live with many religion, many caste, many tradition, many invasions we have survived. So basically we need to have the quality of adjustability. But whenever we are making an adjustment as individuals, as families or groups, we are also making some compromises which is creating some hurt and pain. And that if we start looking at those compromises, we are scared that we may lose our adjustability. So what happens is these compromises are pushed and not looked at, made opaque, and this forms the shadow part of the culture. The same shadow part of the nation culture also influences an organization culture. When the business owner believes that he can make some changes with the organizational coach, they invite an organizational coach. All leaders are very enthusiastic about making a change because on the surface level, we are very adjustable people. Using this, the business coach is able to make some transactional changes. But when the business coach and the leaders start looking at the ground reality as closer as possible to the difficulties, the failures, then the compromises the business leader is making, the team is making, starts coming to visibility, and the leaders start feeling the despair and withdraw from the change initiatives. Now what happens because of this is, because of avoiding the shadow part of the culture, the organization is not able to make radical changes, a transformational change which can help this organization to thrive in the market. But when the business owners learn to look at the shadow part of the culture, then the opaqueness disappears, shades of requirements and potentials become visible, which supports the organizational growth.
Yeah, hi, my name is Cindy, Hurley Leister. I'm an international business coach based here in Australia. And yeah, I received a question from Dennis on how does country culture influence business coaching, if at all. And yeah, that's a big question. First, focusing on, well, what is the country culture here in Australia and what does it mean for business and for coaching? And first I have to say, I started my coaching practice, my full-time practice here in Australia 3 years ago. So I'm, quite new to the country, and around about 20% of my clients are based in Australia. And that already leads me to the first kind of dimension that I'm noticing is that Australia is a highly multicultural country, right? I read somewhere 25% Australians are born outside of Australia. So it's very diverse. It's changing all the time. And it's really, there's so many reference points, so many celebrations. Yet one kind of thread that I learned about is the connection to its First Nations people, right? So it's one of the oldest living cultures in the world that have suffered immensely through colonization. And just in the last decades, the path of redemption has started. And I guess as German, being born and raised in Germany, we know a lot about owning our history and bringing that into the present, right? And that's what Australia is doing, and it's definitely influencing business culture. So, every meeting, usually a group meeting at least, maybe not every coaching session, but every formal meeting is started with acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land and paying respect to their elders, past, present, and future. And it's learned at school. Really, it's in business. It's maybe even more immersing in business. And I would say in Germany, we find our histories, right? It's usually not a conversation we have in business. So I want to acknowledge the land that I'm on. It's the Darug and Gandangara people. And I'm 90 kilometers west of Sydney in the Blue Mountains. And it's a very ancient, a very almost spiritual place. And that deep connection to the land, to nature, I would say definitely has an effect on business. And at the same time, of course, there are, a lot of footprints from the Anglo-Saxon, let's say, culture, right? And I noticed a lot of similarities to the UK, especially in business coaching, which traditionally, before the pandemic, I would say, evolved, as executive or circled around executive coaching. So it took place in the major business hubs in Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, in offices, face-to-face. It was, as a coach, you had to demonstrate your gravitas, your prestige, your education at the right institutions. It was a bit elite as well. And that's definitely something where the culture here, the country culture, influenced business coaching. So, and maybe as a last point, during the pandemic or with the shift towards digitalization, that also changed the coaching landscape here in Australia. So now it's a lot more accessible to a broader employee base. It also means a lot of the coaches, there's a lot of coaches now outside of Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth or Brisbane. That's the other hub I forgot. And and it's becoming more agile. It's becoming more on demand. So really, I would say focusing on what employees need at different, stages in their career, at different levels, a lot of middle management, of course, topics. So it moved away just being purely focused on executive level. And these are my points. And unfortunately, because of the time difference, I'm not able to join you. But I wish you a great discussion with Dennis. And maybe I even pose the question back, like, how does Germany's country culture, influence business coaching?
I think some of you or many of you might have heard of the World Value Foundation and the survey they do every year. And I don't know if you have noticed, but Sweden is quite extreme actually when it comes to self-expression and secular values. So for us as coaches, it's very natural to coach individuals to find their own values, to find their own purpose, and of course then also what makes them happy at work. But after that, you need to find a good match with the organization that will enhance these values. And as a business coach, I actually found it quite important for us to coach the CEO and the management team to be really clear on the company's values. Because if they're not clear and you get people in that have really strong individual values that don't match the business values, you will make bad recruitments. So we try to make the business leaders very clear on what kind of culture is here and what kind of values is actually ours to get the best match with people.
Sonst Unterschiede, die du für dich merkst? Oder Gewichtung von den Themen, gibt es da Unterschiede?
Ja, definitiv, weil in China die Arbeitslast, das Arbeitstempo sehr hoch ist, weil auch die Lebenssituationen damit sehr eng verknüpft sind. Also wenn in Europa immer wieder mal so diese Themen sind, sozusagen Stressabbau, Work-Life-Balance, sich selbst verwirklichen, Sinn finden, geht es in China eher ums einerseits Vorankommen, wenn ich jetzt karrieremäßig denke, und andererseits einfach wirklich so diesen eng getakteten Lebensalltag zu bewältigen. Also die arbeitstätigen Menschen, wenn ich jetzt irgendwie mir so jemanden vorstelle zwischen 30 und 45 Jahre, die sind einerseits verantwortlich für ihre Kinder, wo natürlich die Ausbildung auch mit Kosten verbunden ist, weil es einfach nicht so viel kostengünstige Angebote gibt wie in Europa. Wenn ich zum Beispiel an Musikschule denke, kostet es sehr viel, weil die Leute gleichzeitig meist normalerweise 1,5 bis 2 Stunden Arbeitsweg in eine Richtung haben. Also die haben einfach sehr lange Tage und sind gleichzeitig auch für die Altersversorgung ihrer Eltern zuständig, sowohl organisatorisch wie auch finanziell. Und das ist schon eine große Last und das prägt natürlich auch die Themen im Coaching.
Hello. Namaste. Vanakkam. Greetings from India. I'm going to share a business case. In the context of business coaching, when I was working with a business owner, whenever this business owner was conducting his team meetings, he was building huge pressure for the team. And then the team was failing to create organizational change. So I invited the business owner to have a private conversation with me, and then we discovered the business owner has made a promise to his father that he will build his business within the next 7 years. But things were not happening to his expectation. So he was mounting pressure within him, and he was building the same pressure to the team, and the team was not able to withstand the pressure. Once he became aware of how his private promise is influencing the business world, he decided to contain his agitation within him and not to transfer this agitation to the team. This led to the team able to have connection with the leader, and the team and the leader functioning cohesively to build projects, and they took the organization to the next level. This resolution in the business owner created a dilemma in me. As a business coach, how much I should give attention to the private role contaminating the business role also. In order to resolve this dilemma, whenever I asked for a contract in business coaching, I asked for contract in 2 levels. One is a primary focus, where the focus is on market requirements, business development, leadership development, team development. And then the secondary focus is on a private space for the leaders and team members if they're going through something personally, or how the organizational roles impact the personal life. There is a space to talk about their reactions and organize their thoughts and regulate themselves. When I resolved the dilemma to hold space for both the organizational role and some amount of the private role, it helped them to resolve their dilemma and have a balance between their professional role and the private role. So in the context of business coaching, the leaders and team were getting the benefit and transferring this benefit beyond the organization to their personal life and into their family life.
Ich glaube schon, dass sich was verändern wird, einfach dadurch, dass westliche Unternehmen damit konfrontiert sind, dass ihre europäischen, amerikanischen Mitarbeiter zunehmend das Land verlassen aufgrund der Null-Covid-Strategie und damit sehr viele Aufgabenbereiche wieder stärker von chinesischen Mitarbeitern verantwortet werden. Und gerade im Bereich Personalentwicklung, Organisationsentwicklung habe ich immer wieder erlebt, sozusagen in der traditionellen chinesischen Arbeitsweise sind Maßnahmen wie Coaching oder Workshops, Seminare, werden eher als Urlaub und Belohnung gesehen und nicht tatsächlich jetzt als Personalentwicklung, die notwendig ist, damit die Leute sich entwickeln, was dazulernen, sich entfalten können. Ich habe sehr viele sehr gute chinesische Personalentwicklerinnen und Entwickler kennengelernt, die auch sozusagen für diesen Weg es als Personalentwicklung zu sehen eintreten und sich stark dafür einsetzen. Ich glaube aber tatsächlich, dass wenn sozusagen dieses europäische Backing der Welt wegfällt, dass das wieder mehr in ein traditionelles Verständnis zurück sich entwickelt.
Okay. Danke vielmals für das Gespräch.
So that brings us to maybe a jumping board to the last point, and that these are the inner development goals, an initiative initiated in Sweden, but on a global level, on a global basis. And maybe you would, to finish off, elaborate a little bit on what the inner development goals are and what they might have to do with the Swedish culture.
Yeah. So in Sweden, the inner development, finding yourself, finding your purpose, your values is really important to people. And maybe that is one of the reasons why this big initiatives started here and lives here right now. It's a global initiative, so it doesn't have so much to do with Sweden as a bigger whole. But we do have an idea that inner development is needed to be able to solve the complex problems that we have now globally. So we have the SDGs from UN, the sustainability goals, and the IDGs is supporting the SDGs by inner development. And we've got universities, we've got scholars, and we also got business partners within the IDG initiative that all support the idea that what we really need now to solve the problems in the world with poverty, with environment, and also with people's bad health is that we unite around expanding consciousness and in growing as people. As Einstein said, you can't solve problems at the same level of consciousness that created them. You need to enhance yourself before you can solve it. And this initiative is really big and it's all built on that idea. And we have different areas that have been, by researchers, decided that these areas are what we need to develop as people if we're going to solve the problems we see in the world. So it's about being, it's about collaborating, it's about relating, thinking, and acting.
Thank you very much, Caroline. This sparks so much interest, and we would love to have a whole session on the IDGs, and maybe later at a conference, maybe an IOBC conference, we will have that. For now, I thank you from the bottom of my heart to give us such a fresh and precise and clear outlook on what business coaching, feels like, what a Swedish business coach has on her or his mind when thinking about business coaching in Sweden. Thank you very much, Caroline Seerblad from Ninfea Leadership Development, for this fresh insight.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
That leads me to my final thoughts around the topic of, international or culturalism in coaching, I guess, cultural differences and similarities that I find we live in a time, as Otto Scharmer describes it, whose work I follow and really influences also my personal view on the world, is that we live in crises, right? We have the social divide, the ecological divide, and the spiritual divide. And in order to face these crises as humanity, we need to move from the downloading piece into more the emerging, sensing the future. And that is independent of our cultural background, right? That is trying to work with those biases, with our baggage that we have, on the backpack that we bring. So really that adaptability and being present, that presencing, being in the present moment, and then working with that. Maybe that's why I wasn't aware before, right, with my clients and their cultural backgrounds, because that's what we're trying to do in coaching. And so often it works, sometimes it doesn't, right, to be present and help the client to sense, whatever future is presenting. And that's what I think, we need to do as a collective as well. So I'm wishing you a great discussion, and maybe I end with a question as well, right? So what do you think, in the words of Otto Scharmer, needs protecting from us as coaches, right? In our role as coaches of coachees around the world, what needs protecting?